वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं तथ्यमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्तस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरोन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. We welcome all the devotees for this Bhakti Vaibhav class, third canto. So yesterday we began the 6th chapter, creation of the universal form. I'll just briefly go through the first few verses. We'll go ahead. So in the last chapter end, we saw that the presiding deities of the elements, they offered prayers to the Supreme Lord. They were not able to combine the different elements for carrying out the creation, for assisting the Lord in His creation. Therefore, the presiding deities of the elements, They offered wonderful prayers to the Supreme Lord. They glorified the Lord. At the end, they actually they expressed their desire. They put forward their appeal that please give us the intelligence, knowledge, please give us your mercy and the power to carry out your creation. And we pray that we happily engage in your service. So, in response to that, how the Lord helps the Devatas, that will be described in this particular chapter. In this chapter, we saw that Maitreya Rishi continued the description that seeing the sleeping state in creating the universe, because the elements were unmixed, the Lord energy of cohesion, that means by his cohesive Shakti, by his energy of cohesion, appearing through time, and then as Antaryami entered the 23 elements simultaneously. So the Lord entered the universe in two ways. First, he entered through his particular energy of cohesion. That means to bring all the elements together to form the different bodies. First, he entered the universe through his energy, and then he entered the universe as the Antaryami or the Paramatma in each and every element. And then we discussed that the Lord, when he entered the universe, by his Kriya Shakti, Sa Anupravishto Bhagavans, Cheshta Rupe means by Kriya Shakti. The Lord, when he entered the universe by his Kriya Shakti, he awakened the dormant karmas of the living entities. Suptam Karma Prabodhayan. That was the third verse. All the dormant karmas of the jivas were awakened. And then the 23 elements, they were awakened to action by the Kriya Shakti, being stimulated by the 23 elements combined, and they produced what is called as the universal form. Prerito Ajanayat, Prerito being stimulated or inspired by the Lord. Prerito Ajanayat Swabir Matrabir Adipurusham. Adipurusham refers to the universal form. They produce the universal form by combining with them. And then Parena Vishata Swasmin Matraya Vishwasrigatmana. The elements for creating the universe, they combined together by the Lord, who had entered the elements by his portion, by his Amsha, as Paramatma. The Lord had entered the elements. So the elements combined together, and then they formed a fetus in which Yasmin Lokas Characharaha. So all the elements combined together and they formed a fetus, that means it refers to a universe, in which all the living entities and the planets exist. And this universal form is golden in color, Hiranmaya. It's called as Hiranmaya, and it is also called as Samashti Virat, the totality of the universe. And Andakosha Uvas Apsu Sarva Sattvopa Brahmita. It remained within the Garbhodaka ocean for 1,000 years. Or this universe remained in the Karana ocean for 1,000 years. Yesterday we also discussed that from the skin pores of Mahavishnu, the universes emanate. We have heard the description. So from the skin pores of Mahavishnu, that is what the Brahma Samhita describes. The universes emanate in a seed form, and then Mahavishnu glances over those seeds, and then in this way when he glances over that seed form, how the creation proceeds. And that's what the description we saw in the last chapter. Last chapter, how the Lord dances over the Pradhana, Prakriti, how the creation proceeded. From that came the Mahatattva. Mahatattva came the Ahankara. Ahankara was classified into Vaikarika, Taijasa, and Tamasa. So that description we saw. And this fetus, this universal form, this fetus divided itself into 1 Jiva Shakti, 10 Prana Shakti, and 3 Atma Shakti. That is the 7th verse. Savai Vidhu Deva Karmatma Shaktiman Vibhaja Atmanatmanam Ekata Dashada Trita. Ekada, 1 Jiva Shakti, Dashada, the 10 Prana Shaktis, and 3 Atma Shaktis, which we will discuss today. And then the 8th verse, which we concluded yesterday. Yeshach Ashesha Sattmana. So this universal form is the soul of unlimited living entities. Atmamsha Paramatmana. In comparison to Paramatma, this universal form is the Jiva, or it is the Jiva in relation to Paramatma, or it is an Amsha of Paramatma, Atmamsha Paramatmana. And Adyovatara, it is seen as the original avatar. Bhuta Grama Vibhavyate. Within this form, all the living entities appear. So, Vivek Chakravarti, in this commentary, he explains that Paramatmo Upasakana Chitta Shuddhyartam Pratamam Ayam Eva Upasya Ityaga Yesha Hi Iti. So in this verse, the word Yesha Hi, Yesha Ashesha Sattvanam, that is how the verse begins. Yesha Hi, what does it mean is that in order to purify the heart of the worshippers of the Paramatma, this form should be worshipped first. Those who are Paramatma Upasakas, those who are worshippers of the Paramatma, in order to qualify oneself to come to the stage of worshipping Paramatma, first a person should worship the Virata Rupa. So Virata Rupa is like a preliminary stage, worship or meditate on this form. So we will see the description of the Virata Rupa in actually detail today. So some of the questions which were raised yesterday, what are the differences in the Virata Rupa, imaginary form, all these questions will be addressed today in due course. So I will read the 9th verse. Sadhyatma Sadi Daivascha Sadi Bhuta Yititrida Virat Prano Dashavida Ekada Hridayena Cha. So, the 3 Atma Shaktis are called as the Sadhya, Adhyatma, Adidaiva and Adibhuta, which are described in the first 2 lines. Sadhyatma, Sadidaivascha, Sadibhuta, Iti Trida. The 3 Atma Shaktis are the Adidaiva and Adibhuta. So Adidaiva refers to the presiding deities, presiding devatas of the different senses. That is the Adidaiva. And Adhyatma refers to the subtle senses. So every sense organ has a gross aspect and a subtle aspect. So for example, when we see the nose, so what we see is the gross sense organ. But then there is a subtle sense organ which is called as a Granendriya, which we cannot see. That is just in the tip of the nose. The subtle sense organ is called as the Adhyatma. For every sense organ, there is a gross sense organ and a subtle sense organ. So, Adhyatma refers to the subtle sense organ. And Adhibhuta refers to the gross sense organ and the corresponding sense object. So, this is what these three terms mean. Adidaiva, Adhyatma and Adhibhuta. Adidaiva refers to the presiding deities of the senses, the Devatas. And the Adhyatma refers to the subtle sense organ. And Adhibhuta refers to the gross sense organ and the sense object. And Virat Prano Dashavida. So the prana, there are 10 types of prana, the 10 prana shaktis. Prabhupada also explains in this purport. So there are 10 pranas which are called as prana, apana, samana, udana, vyana, naga, kurma, krikara, devadatta and dhananjaya. So what are the functions or where these pranas are situated? They are described. The first prana is called as prana only. First, that this prana moves forward and it is located in the nostrils. And apana moves downwards and it is located in the anus. Samana causes assimilation of food and drink which are eaten. And the samana is located in the middle of the body. Udana rises upwards and is located in the throat. Vyana moves everywhere in the body and is located in the whole body. Naga causes expulsion. Kurma causes eyes to open. Krikara causes hunger. Devadatta causes yawning. Dhananjaya causes nourishment. So you get the different life years have a different functions. Even the Ayurvedic aspect of medicine is based on Kapha, Vata, Pitta. Vata refers to the different years in the body. Many times because of the imbalance of the Kapha, Vata, Pitta and different diseases come to a person. So these are the 10 pranas and these are the functions of the 10 pranas. Prabhupada also explains in this purport. And then there is one Jiva Shakti. The one Jiva Shakti refers to the Jiva with unbroken, which is situated in the heart. So this one Jiva Shakti is like we can say the CPU of the computer, the central processing unit. The central energy is the superior energy of the Supreme Lord, who is seated within the heart with the soul of the body, and who acts under the guidance of the Supreme Lord. Sarvasya Chagam Pradisannivishto. So the conditioned soul's conditioned state is due to forgetfulness of the relationship of subordination to the Lord. So the conditioned state is like that of a person who is within the depths of a huge mechanical arrangement. Sometimes in a factory there is a huge mechanical arrangement is there. Somebody who is working in Bajaj, this ordnance factories in Pune, there's a huge mechanical arrangement is there. And within that, people are working for like a tiny people within that whole mechanical arrangement. So the conditioned soul is like that of a person who is within the depths of a huge mechanical arrangement. So there are, of course, Prabhupada gives the analogy of two birds in the tree. So within this huge mechanical arrangement of the body, there is a soul and the super soul. They are compared to two birds in a tree. One bird is wanting to enjoy the fruits of the tree, but another bird is completely detached. One may wonder that how both the birds are situated in the same body, but how is it that one bird is actually completely unaffected by the different sense objects, the different external situations? How is that super soul is completely unaffected by the different emotions of lamentation, anchoring? A simple example we can relate. Suppose someone, suppose you eat a nice halwa made out of ghee or butter. So when you eat a halwa made out of a ghee, after eating the halwa, we actually wash our hands with the soap, or we wash our hands previously with the earth. There would be ghee stain would be there. But after eating the halwa, do we wash our mouth also in the same way we wash our hands? Do we actually wash our mouth also with the soap? In the hand, sometimes that ghee stain, and sometimes we use soap or some earthen material, some this thing. But we don't use that same substance to wash our mouth. We don't feel that, oh, my mouth has become sticky with the ghee. No, the same substance, halwa, but in one part of the body, the ghee in that halwa gets stuck to the one part of the body. Therefore, we need to wash with some external substance. But the same halwa, when it comes in contact with the tongue does not get affected by the sticky substance of a ghee or a butter. So, Paramatma, although the Atma and Paramatma are there in the same body, but Atma gets affected by the external situations and the sense objects and the different experiences of life. But Paramatma remains completely unaffected. Smaran Vishwasrajamisho Vijñapidamadokshajaha Virajam Atapatsvena Tejasaisham Vivrittaye. So in this verse, Smaran Vishwasrajam Isha. Smaran Vishwasrajam. Vishwasraja refers to the Devatas, the presiding deities who offered prayers in the last chapter. Smaran, remembering those prayers. What did the Lord do? Remembering those prayers, the Lord decided to create this universal form by his Chitta Shakti. So therefore, the whole universal form was created by the Lord as response to the prayers offered, by remembering the prayers offered by those Devatas. So the Lord created this universal form, or decided to create this universal form, remembering the prayers of the personified elements. And Tejasa Yesha Vivrittaye, by his Chitta Shakti. So the Chitta Shakti, the Lord created this universal form so that the elements could perform their functions. So the Lord remembering the prayers of the Devata. So in this purpose, Prabhupada gives quite a heavy dose to the scientists or the PhDs. So, Prabhupada's first paragraph, he explains that without the living entity, a material body cannot automatically take shape or develop. When any material object displays development, it must be understood that there is a spiritual soul within the manifestation. So the Lord is called as Avan Manasa Gochara, beyond the conception of words and minds. Just like the materialist cannot find the soul and the super soul. within the body. Therefore, the Lord is described as Avan Manasa Gochara, and especially the materialists who are into, those who take shelter of the process of speculation. That means those who think that with their own minds and intelligence they can understand the Supreme Lord or the cause of the universe. So such people are like the frogs in the well. So he says, Prabhupada explains that the mystics are completely unable to speculate on the Supreme with a limited sense. Such attempts by the puffed up PhDs are compared to the philosophy of the frog in the well. A frog in a well was informed of the gigantic Pacific Ocean, and he began to puff himself up in order to understand or measure the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean. Ultimately, the frog burst and died. The title PhD can also be interpreted as plow department, a title meant for the tillers in the paddy field. So this is a attempt of the tillers in the paddy field to understand the cosmic manifestation and the cause behind such a wonderful work can be compared to the endeavor of the frog in the well to calculate the measurement of the Pacific Ocean. So, sometimes when we are actually proud of our, sometimes because our academic degree or some scientific advancement, sometimes when we hear such statements, we may get hurt actually. I was discussing, there was some discussion about this some subject about vaccines, and that I was just mentioning some general points. Like when a person, suppose, so when a girl gets married, when a woman gets married to a husband, so suppose, say for example, the girl before the marriage, she had a certain, say, boyfriends. Nowadays, colleges, schools, it is quite common everywhere there is a common education, co-education. So there is a pre-mixing. A girl may have certain boyfriends or something. But then after the marriage, with a particular, the girl is supposed to, woman is supposed to chase to the husband, and a woman is supposed to not only be chaste to the husband, but also respect the different relatives who are related to the husband. Say the father-in-law, mother-in-law, the brother-in-law, sister-in-law. One is supposed to show proper respect and also to everyone related to the husband, because it's not only one is married to one particular person, it is the entire family. The relationship with the entire family is there. And then, and the third point is like gets married to the husband so when she's respecting the different family members who are related to the husband, it is not that the girl becomes more intimate towards one of the relative of the husband, and the relationship with the husband goes in the background. So these are normal the principles of, say, family culture which we see in this world. But the same principle, I'm just trying to we can compare the same principle for a spiritual life. So the girl getting married to the husband, we can compare with a living entity surrendering to Krishna. A living entity, whether it's in the male body or a female body, any living entity, when the living entity surrenders to Krishna through the spiritual master by accepting a guru. A girl getting married. differently, just have different boyfriends before. Living it before surrendering to Krishna, he may have conceptions in his mind. One may have different conceptions like a living entity may have certain fascination towards advancement. A living entity may have certain fascination towards one's academic degree. A living entity may have certain fascination. There can be different conceptions. For example, one may be proud of one's having taken birth in a particular family, or a living entity may have different conceptions like say demigod worship or academic degree or say scientific advancement like that. But when a person, when the living entity surrenders to Krishna, just like when a girl accepts the husband, she cannot, like after the marriage, she is supposed to chase the husband. Whatever say, background she had, whatever the previous relations she had, she can use those relationships only to increase the faithfulness towards the husband. So similarly, a living entity, before surrendering to Krishna, one may have different, say, talents, one may have different academic degrees, or one may be coming from, say, scientific background. One can use all those talents to increase one's surrender to Krishna. One can use all those talents to increase one's surrender to Krishna. But one maintain an emotional relationship, or one cannot maintain an emotional attachment towards one's previous conceptions, especially those conceptions which are based on adharma. Just like a girl cannot maintain still an emotional relationship with one's previous boyfriend after the marriage. So similarly, when a person takes shelter of a spiritual master and surrenders to Supreme Lord, one cannot maintain certain emotional attachment towards one's previous wrong conceptions. So when we maintain those emotional attachments towards one's previous wrong conceptions, then that will struggle for our actually surrender to the Lord, for our service to the Lord. Like for example, like Prabhupada watched the moon landing thing in the being cast live in 1970s. The whole world was actually celebrating moon landing, about America's achievement. But Prabhupada was so vocal that these people, they are landing in some desert in some place. They are not landing in the moon. It's not possible to go to the moon simply by mechanical arrangement like that. And Prabhupada was he did not actually accept that only. But then there was one servant of Prabhupada who was actually serving Prabhupada. He couldn't actually take those words of Prabhupada. And he felt so hurt. After that incident, he actually left Prabhupada, he left the association of devotees. So what is the reason? Although he was actually, he was surrendered to a guru, he accepted Prabhupada as a guru, but still, he still maintained his fascination towards scientific advancement. So because of that emotional attachment towards the scientific advancement or the technology or that, so he couldn't actually take those strong words of Prabhupada, and he felt hurt, and then he left the association of devotees. So similarly, because when we read Prabhupada's purports, there are some sections where Prabhupada, like this present section, where he gives a heavy dose for a PhD, he gives a different interpretation only. PhD means flow department. Normally, a person to get a PhD degree, how many years it takes? Actually, it takes after the schooling, a person goes through graduation and then post-graduation, and then and each step there is entrance exam. Sometimes a person studies for 1 year, 2 years, entrance exam, and then post again PhD. Practically a person slogs under a guide for 5 years. So one may think and then ultimately it's in this PhD is nothing but flow department. So one can, if a person maintains certain, say, emotional attachments, one can use those degrees, can utilize our PhD degree or whatever talent we have. We can use all those degrees in Krishna's service. But sometimes certain aspects which are not based on dharma, if we maintain certain emotional attachment, if we are proud of our academic degree, like once, like some group of devotees from IIT, they were told us Radhanath Maharaj. And Radhanath Swami Maharaj said that from the spiritual point of view, IIT is nothing but a miserable ghetto. IIT is a very most miserable ghetto. It's like something like if you have seen some chawls in Bombay or in cities, some chawl, small houses of practically some 300 or 400 square feet house will be there. In that there is kitchen, hall and bedroom, and then in the chawl some 25 families will be staying. There will be common bathroom, toilet. So from a spiritual point, that's something like a place, some small chawl. So Maharaj said that from spiritual point of view, what we consider as something great institute is like a most miserable ghetto. Of course, it's not that we'll speak to some who are when we are teaching in the colleges or something. For them, it will be like they cannot take this. But the point is, but sometimes when we take to Krishna consciousness, it may be easy to accept certain concepts of transcendence about Krishna is the Supreme God, about the path of bhakti, hearing, chanting, etc. But sometimes we may, it may take more time, or it may become little difficult to accept certain certain statements where Prabhupada, certain aspects about a Varnashram Dharma, or certain concepts about how Prabhupada gives certain statements about the scientists or this thing, the modern academic education. So just like a girl should not maintain a emotional relationship with one of her previous boyfriends, similarly, a living entity who surrenders to Krishna through a guru, a living entity should not maintain certain emotional attachment towards one's previous wrong conception. And that's what, in fact, we can see that 10th offense, the holy name, or something like that. To maintain material attachments, even after hearing so much about the glories of the holy name, to maintain material attachments, it can fall into various degrees. One is with respect to me and mine. Material attachments can be a certain material attachment towards the academic degree, etc. And then, just like a girl is supposed to respect also the relatives who are connected with the husband. So similarly, when a living entity surrenders to Krishna, the living entity is supposed to respect the different aspects of Sanatana Dharma, seeing them in relation to Krishna. So, getting married to the husband, we can compare to getting married to Krishna, or we can say getting married to Srimad Bhagavatam. So, when we get married to Srimad Bhagavatam, but at the same time, you also respect the different in-laws and different relatives who are connected with the husband. That means you also respect the other scriptures. You also respect the other branches of Vedic knowledge. Because very often we will find there are devotees who may have taken to Krishna consciousness, but who may have some, in certain aspects of life, they may have more faith in modern science, and sometimes they may ridicule or they may have aversion to certain other branches of Vedic knowledge. So that is why the Bhagavatam says that Shraddham Bhagavatam Shastre Anindam Anyatra Chapiti. Have faith in the scriptures which teach devotional service, Bhagavata Dharma, and at the same time do not criticize the other Vedic scriptures, whether it is Ayurveda or astrology or the other Puranas or Mahabharata, because this is also important. And also another aspect is that, okay, the girl respects the different relatives of the husband, but suppose a girl becomes more intimate with one of the relatives of the husband, and the relation with the husband goes in the background, and some other relationship becomes more prominent, then that is also wrong. So similarly, when a living entity, after surrendering to Krishna, suppose if the devotee gets carried away from the Bhagavad Dharma and he becomes more involved in, say, astrology. He becomes more involved in astrology and his main, say, faith in the Bhagavad Dharma gets slackened. Or a devotee becomes more involved in, say, philanthropy or Varnashram Dharma. Varnashram Dharma is important. Prabhupada said that 50% of this thing is to establish Varnashram Dharma. But the purpose of Varnashram Dharma is what? Is to actually ultimately to please Krishna. The purpose of Varnashram Dharma is Bhagavad Dharma, to please Krishna. But suppose in performing the different aspects of Varnashram Dharma or astrology or Ayurveda, different this one, and if the Bhagavad Dharma becomes sidelined, or in doing some Sanskrit studies, like sometimes certain disciples of Prabhupada, certain devotees who went into Sanskrit studies, and then they got carried away, and then they got carried away from the main Bhagavad Dharma, or they went into a different direction. That is just like a girl becomes more intimate with one of the relatives of the husband, and the relationship with the husband goes in the background. So that way we can see that when we read these statements, how PhD means flower department or something. So you may get shocked. Some of you may be PhDs or some of you may be postgraduates. Sometimes Prabhupada says that technology is meant for the Shudras and scriptures are meant for the... Oh, what a heavy statement. How I can't accept these statements. But actually they are reality. It may be a little difficult to digest those statements. But that is why it is important that when we take to Krishna consciousness, we should examine, do we still maintain certain emotional attachment towards our certain preconceptions? And we also have to see that, am I also respecting the different other branches of Vedic knowledge, the different am I also respecting the different devatas who are in relation to Krishna, different aspects of the Vedic knowledge, which are also in relation to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is something which we can examine. So going ahead, I'll go a little fast. So now the 11th to 34th verse, Maitreya Rishi gives a description of the universal form. 11th to 34th. Atatasya vitaptasya katidayatanani niravidyanta devanam tani me gadadashunu. So in this universal form which had appeared, different places arose for the devatas, and hear about those from me as I speak. Maitreya is going to describe all universal. So if you see in this purport, Prabhupada says that when the living entities are rich in pious acts of devotional service to the Lord, and when the desire to laud it over material energy has vanished, they are promoted to the post of the Devatas who are entrusted by the Lord with executing the management of the universal affairs. So just try to contrast this purport with the last verse purport in the previous chapter. In the previous chapter, last verse, yesterday we saw that purport, the 51st verse purport. It was mentioned that who become the Devatas? Those who are devotees of the Lord, but who still have some actually desire to control, and they become the Devatas. That the demigods are amongst the conditioned souls who have developed the pure consciousness of service to the Lord, but also at the same time continue to desire to lord it over the material energy. So he says that they are devotees, but who have still some desire to lord it over material energy. But in this purport, Prabhupada gives the Devatas are almost pure devotees only. So when they desire to lord it over material energy, they are promoted to the post of the Devatas. So sometimes we can see different purports like that. So many times our idea we tend to think in terms of which is correct, because this purport seems to be contradicting that previous purport. That purport says the Devatas have some desire to lord it over matter, but here it says that their desire to lord it over material energy has vanished. So if we read the different Prabhupada, this one, sometimes there are different purports which will be contradicting each other. So because of coming from the modern education background, many times we tend to think in terms of black and white. Is this correct or that correct? It takes sometimes many years to come to understanding both can be correct. Because many times the modern education, that conditioning makes the person to think only in terms of binary. 0 or 1. This is correct or that is correct. But both can be correct. We can see in a relative way, sometimes a devotee, how we can reconcile what I can think is that sometimes the devotee becomes very liberal in his glorification. A devotee becomes very liberal in his glorification. So therefore Prabhupada is taking a very liberal stance in this verse, that when the desire material energy has vanished, they become the Devatas. So he makes the Devatas, he is very liberal in glorifying the Devatas. They are actually pure devotees. They don't have any desire to lord it over matter. We can say it's like a Uttamadhikari mood, we can say. Of course, it's a more liberal this one, but in that purport, Prabhupada was a little more strict in the sense that he's saying that Devatas are those who understood their constitutional position but also have some desire to lord it over matter. So the next verses I will actually Tasyagnirasyam nirbinnam lokapalo vishatpadam vacha swamshena bhaktavyam yayasau pratipadyate. So there is a common theme in each of those verses. So what is being described is that there are initially the universal form. It was we can compare with the birth of a child. So in the birth of a child also, later we will see the description of the child in the womb at the end of the third canto. But even scientifically also we can see when the child is conceived in the womb of a mother, initially the child will be in the form of a lump lump of a flesh. But as time progresses, say in first month, second month, third month, fourth month, the different parts of the child get formed. The eyes get formed, the mouth gets formed, the ear gets formed. So they all get formed in due course of time, step by step. And also when we see after the child takes birth, we also see the further development of the child after the child takes birth. The teeth comes after certain days, and then the hair starts coming after some days, like that. So similarly, the universal form in the beginning, it was more like one lump of a fetus. But gradually, the organs of the universal form got formed. And that is how all these descriptions are. So in each of these descriptions, so these four things will be described. The sense devata is called as the adidaiva, and the subtle sense organ is called as adhyatma, and the gross sense organ and the sense object, both these are called as adibhuta. So these four will be described in the universal form in each of these verses. Then for the next, I think, 15, 16 verses. So, like Agni agitated from this mouth, and all the direct materials entered into the respective position. By the tendency, the living entity expresses himself in words. I'll read Vishna Chakratipa's translation. When the mouth of the universal form became differentiated, Agni, which is the presiding deity of the mouth, entered that place along with the sense organ called voice, by which the universal form could utter the words. So, essentially, each version of how each organ of the universal form became formed. So, in that regard, these four things are described. For each organ, there is a presiding devata, the adidaiva, and then the presiding devata enters that aspect of the universal form along with the subtle sense organ, and he enters that place where the gross sense organ is there, and using the gross sense organ, one can actually experience that particular gross sense object. So here, in this verse, the sense devata is Agni, and Asya is the gross sense organ, that is mouth. And the subtle sense organ is actually I think the particular word is not mentioned, but Vata, or voice is mentioned. The subtle, I think the particular word for the subtle sense organ is some other place it is there. And then the particular sense object is the speech. So, that the same description will come in each and every verse. The next verse, Nirbinnam talu varuno lokapalu vishatare yishvayamshena charasam yaso pratipadyate. So, talu refers the palate. The palate is the gross sense organ. When the palate of that universal form became differentiated, that means the palate manifested, then the presiding deity of the palate, called as Varuna, entered along with the subtle sense organ. The subtle sense organ is called as Jihva. Jihva is the Adhyatma here. And then by this tongue, one can experience the taste, rasa. Rasa is a sense object. So by this tongue, one can, the universal count could experience the taste, the sense object, which is the adibhuta. And then Nirbinne Ashvinau Nase Vishnur Avishatam Padam Grani Namshina Gandhasya Pratipattir Yato Bhave. So when the nostrils of the universal form became differentiated, Nase is the nostrils, the gross sense organ, and then the presiding deity called as the Ashwini Kumaras, Ashwini Kumaras entered along with the subtle sense organ. The subtle sense organ is the Grana. Grana is the subtle sense organ, and the nostrils are the gross sense organ. And then by this, the universal form could smell could experience smell. Gandhasya. Gandha is the sense object, which is the Adibhuta. So both the gross sense organ and the sense object, they are called as Adibhuta. The subtle sense organ is called as Adhyatma, and the sense Devata is called as Adidaiva. And then next verse says that when the gross eyeballs of the universal form became differentiated, then the presiding deity, the sun god, he entered along with the subtle sense organ called as Chakshu. So Chakshu is the subtle sense organ of the eye. And then one can experience the form. Rupanam. Rupa is the sense object, that is the form. And then when the gross skin of the universal form became differentiated, the presiding deity called as Vayu entered that gross sense organ along with the subtle sense organ called as skin. And then by the sense organ of skin, the sense object of touch is perceived. The sense object touch also arises. And then 17th verse, Karnavasya vinirbinnam dishnyam svam vivishur dishaha Shrotrena Shabdasya Siddhim Yena Prapadyate. So when the ears of the universal form became differentiated, Karna, the presiding deity of the ears, the presiding deity of the directions, Dishnyam Swam Vivishur Disha, the presiding deities of the direction, along with the subtle sense organ called as Shrotra, Shrotrendriya. The presiding deities entered along with the Shrotrendriya. And by these ears, Shabda, which is the knowledge of the sense of the ears, the sense object of the ears. By the ears, the knowledge of the sense object called the sound appeared. And then next verse says, when the gross skin of the universal form appeared. Tvacham asya vinirbinna vivishur dishya moshati. When the gross skin of the universal form appeared, the presiding deity is called as plants, Voshadi. The presiding deity is the plants, along with the subtle sense organ. The subtle sense organ here is the hairs in the body. Amshena Romabik Kandum. The hairs in the body is the subtle sense organ. And then by this bodily hairs, a person experiences itching sensation. Kandum yairasau pratipatyate. By this bodily hairs, relief from itching appears. And then, 19th verse. Medram tasya vinirbinnam svadishyam ka upavishat. Reta samshena yenasau anandam pratipatyate. So when the gross sense organ of the universal, when the gross sex organ of the universal form became differentiated, the presiding deity, the Prajapati, so Vishnu Chakotipad says that the presiding deity Prajapati refers to Daksha here. The presiding deity Prajapati, Daksha, he entered along with the subtle sense organ. The subtle sense organ is the organ which emits the semen. Reta samshena yenasau. And by this sense organ, anandam pratipadyate, where a person experiences sexual bliss. And the next verse, when the gross anus of the universal form became differentiated. So some of the words are common. The word nirbinnam or vinirbinnam, that comes in each and every verse, if you have noted. Like Gudam Pumso Vinirbinnam, that means when the Vinirbinnam is differentiated, that means when that particular organ, just like I gave the example of a childbirth, the child as it grows, each and every organ becomes manifest. Initially it is in the form of a lump of flesh. So when the when the gross anus of the universal form became differentiated, then Mitra, the presiding deity of the anus. So we can see, like Prabhupada, when he gives a description of the universal form in the second canto, he says that every part of the body is controlled by some devata. Even in passing stool, a person needs the cooperation of some devata. So, therefore, like we may think that it is under my control like this. But that is a very superficial thinking. But even as time progresses, when a person goes through different bodily problems, we can see that how we are not able to use our senses properly. So even in passing stool or urine or any activity, one is actually, one needs the cooperation, one is under the control of some devata. So Mitra, who is the presiding deity of the anus, along with the subtle sense organ of the anus, he entered. And then by the sense organ of the anus, the Visargam Pratipadyate. Visarga is the particular function of the anus. Visarga is nothing but basically elimination of stool and urine. And then Hastavasya Vinirbinna Indra Swarpati Ravishat Vartayam Shena Purusho Yayavritti Prapadyate. When the two gross hands of the universal form manifested, the presiding deity of the hands called as Indra, along with this portion, along with the subtle sense organ, that's not particularly mentioned, what name of the subtle sense organ is not mentioned, but along with the sense organ called the, along the subtle sense organ called the hands, which perform buying and selling. Which perform, because with the hands we buy something or sell something. So the presiding, the Indra entered along the subtle sense organ, and by the hands, Yaya Vrittim Prapadyate, a man earns different livelihood, or a man performs a different livelihood. He performs his occupation. Yaya Vrittim Prapadyate. So, and then I'll just go through a few more verses, complete this section, and then we'll take if there are any questions. So when the gross feet of the universal form, Padavasya Vinirbinnam, became differentiated, the presiding deity of the feet is Vishnu. Lokesha Vishnu Ravishat. Vishnu, along with this portion, entered. And this sense organ, Prapyam Prapadyate, a person can go to different destinations by walking. And then Buddhim Chasya Vinirbinnam, when the heart of the universal form, when the heart for intelligence of the universal form became differentiated, the presiding deity, that is Brahma, Vag Isho. Vag Isha refers to Vedas, Vag Isha refers to Brahma. So Brahma, the presiding deity, entered along with the sense organ of intelligence, Bodhena Amshena. So Vishnu Chakravarti also mentions in this series of verses the Adi, the Devata is mentioned in the Pratama Vibhakti, that is nominative case. And the subtle sense organ, which will usually comes in the third line of each of these verses, Bodhena or Vacha, Vartaya, which comes in the third line. So the subtle sense organ is used in the Tritiya Vibhakti, in the instrumental case. And the gross sense object and the gross sense organ, which are usually, gross sense organ is mentioned in the first line and the gross sense object is mentioned in the fourth line. They are mentioned in the Dvitiya Vibhakti, the accusative case. So Vishnu Chakravarti just mentions that in the purport. I just shared that. And in some places, the gross sense object is used in the Shakti Vibhakti, the possessive case. So then the Brahma entered, by intelligence, understanding appeared. 23rd verse, 24th verse, and then Hridayam Chasya Nirvinnam Chandrama Dishyam Avishat Manasam Shena Yenaso Vikriyam Pratipadyate. So when the mind of the universal form became differentiated, just like even in a the children also, the mind also goes through different stages of development of the child. The universal form, when the mind became differentiated, the presiding deity, that is the moon god, entered along with this portion of the mind. And then by this mind, Vikriyam Pratipadyate, the different mental actions appeared. 25th verse, Atmanam Chasya Nirvinnam Abhimanu Avishat Padam Karmanam Shena Yenaso Kartavyam Pratipadyate. So when the Ahankara in the heart of the universal form became differentiated, or when the abode of the Ahankara, in the universal form became differentiated, the presiding deity of Ahankara, who is the Rudra, or Lord Shiva, Rudra, then along with this portion, the subtle aspect of the Ahankara, along with the subtle aspect of the Ahankara, he entered. And Karmanam Shena Yenasav Kartavyam Pratipadyate. By this Ahankara, a person identifies with different things. Kartavyam Pratipadyate. And then 26th verse, Sattvam Chasya Vinirbhinna Mahan Dishnyam Upavishat Chitte Namshena Yenaso Vijnanam Pratipadyate. So when the location in the heart of, when the chitta of the universal form, that means the consciousness, in the consciousness of chitta became differentiated, the presiding deity of chitta, who is Vishnu, somewhere it is mentioned that I couldn't get time to refer, but I remember reading. So this Vishnu is different from the Vishnu who is the presiding deity of the legs. The presiding deity of the legs is also called as Vishnu. The presiding deity of Chitta is also called as Vishnu. The presiding deity of the legs is called as Vishnu, but maybe I will check it and tell in the next class or something. But if I remember properly, that Vishnu is one of the Devata Vishnu. It means, I think, a living entity. But this Vishnu is a Vishnu Tattva, the presiding deity of the consciousness. The presiding deity of the consciousness, the Vishnu, entered along with this portion of Chitta, and by Chitta, Vijnana Pratipadyate, consciousness appeared. So, the consciousness appeared. So Vishnu Chakravarti says that the Chitta is a portion of Mahat Tattva in the individual Jiva. The Mahat Tattva is present in a small portion in every individual Jiva. And that is called as Chitta in the individual Jiva. And then, further description of the universal form continues in the 27th verse. So at this point, if there are any questions, I'll take, and then we'll continue the further description.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, so here also again the description of the Devatas are coming, the presiding deities. So again, this is before even the birth of Brahmaji, it appears, right?
Yeah, it appears actually, because Brahmaji's birth is described in the 8th chapter also. Because here the Brahmaji appears from the navel of the Lord, the lotus flower described later. Here it's also said that the Brahmaji enters, the intelligence of the universal form became differentiated. Brahmaji enters there. Can you go ahead? What is the full question?
Yeah, so these presiding deities, they are not the ordinary devatas. They are Jiva Tattva, or they are the expansion of the Lord, or they are the, like, as we discussed like yesterday, like the devotees empowered, like the pure devotees basically. Because from the prayers also in the previous, yesterday we saw that they are praying about pure devotional service, about the lotus feet of the Lord and bhakti. Everything. They are not like Karma Mishra Bhakta, something like that.
Yeah, they are actually devotees of the Lord. Some of them may be pure devotees, or some of them can be Karma Mishra Bhaktas. But nevertheless, they have the understanding of pure devotional service. Like sometimes a person may know the goal of the pure devotional service is the highest, but still one may have certain desires to also enjoy along with performing bhakti. So then such people, like for example, they can come into the category of Karma Mishra Bhakta. They may know the highest aspect of pure devotional service, but still they have their attachment. So these devatas, when you see the prayers of the devatas in the Bhagavatam, like Prabhupada in that purport, as I mentioned, these are the devatas who understand their constitutional position of the living entity, but at the same time they have some desire to lord it over matter. So therefore they are given that position. So in fact, in one purport in the Bhagavatam, it's explained there are 4 types of Brahma. One Brahma is a Karmi Brahma, it's a fruity worker Brahma. So this Brahma, after his lifetime is over, then he takes birth among the fruity workers. That means like he again takes birth in this world, and he actually, I think he takes birth among the fruity workers and maybe some highly elevated devata. And then there is a Jnani Brahma. After his lifetime is over, then he attains liberation, emerges into the impersonal Brahma. And then there are devotee Brahma. In the devotee Brahma, he mentions 2 categories. One is the pure devotee Brahma, and another is a devotee Brahma, but who also has some desire to lord it over matter. So this devotee Brahma, who has some desire to lord it over matter, in the next life he again takes birth as Brahma, and then he again continues as Brahma, and then when he becomes completely purified, then he goes back to God. The pure devotee Brahma, he actually directly goes back to God. So essentially, there are different, among the devatas, they are all definitely, they accept the subordination to Lord Vishnu. Vishnu Bhakta Smrito Daiva. That there is no question. But some of the devatas, they may be completely pure devotees, but some of them can be Karma Mishra Bhaktas.
So, like during the creation, they have certain roles, but after the creation is done, so what is the sthana where they stay, and what is their role they do? Because later the other devatas also come up. So they are different.
Because these devatas are in charge of the senses of the different living entities. So as long as the living entities are there in the material universe, the devatas have the role. So during the creation, they may have a certain role, and then after the universe is created, during the maintenance phase, they also have a role, because they are in charge of different departments. Just like in every department, in a creation phase, also certain activities are involved, and then once the department is established, and to run any department, it's not that the person disappears. The still activities are going on, and then they continue the role.
Yes, Prabhuji, but what my question is later, which the demigods come, so they are like they are there for some period. After some manvantara, for some manvantara they are there. Like the Indra is there for
One
some.
manvantara. Every devata, usually they are there for one manvantara.
Yeah. So for one manvantara. But these are the presiding deities. They are not just ordinary devatas which will be coming up later for manvantara period. It appears like that. So there are two different set of devatas. In fact, if previous to this chapter we see, there is another set of devatas beyond this universe also.
So the presiding deities of the devatas, and there are presiding deities of the senses, and then there are presiding deities of the. Some of them may be performing multiple roles. Like Indra is the presiding deity of the department of rain, and he is also the king of the heavenly planets, and he also is the presiding deity of the hands. So some of the devatas may be having multiple roles.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
So in Canto 2, we had, a couple of times more the description of the universal form. We have the description of the universal form in Canto 3 as well. So what is the difference between those descriptions and these descriptions in Canto 3? Any specific purpose, with any specific purpose, this universal form is being repeatedly, being mentioned?
Yes. So the overall description is almost the same, the second canto, third canto. Some details are explained a little more in detail in the second canto. Some details are described are omitted in third canto. For example, like second canto description from the ahankara and mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. All the elements which emanate from ahankara and mode of passion, ignorance, they are described completely in second canto. In the third canto, in the last canto description, some elements are not mentioned. Like for example, about the life here also emanates from the ahankara in, I think, mode of passion or something. But that is not mentioned in the third canto description. That was explained in the second canto description. So some details are there extra there. And regarding the question why they are repeated, I suggest there is a verse in the second canto, Mayam Varnayato. Let me just get that verse. That verse actually clearly describes why the actually universal form is described repeatedly in the Bhagavatam. The reason is that so this verse 2.7.53. So 2.7.53, this verse describes actually in this purport why the universal form is described in detail repeatedly. That point is mentioned. The essential point is for a conditioned soul who is in material consciousness, when he hears the universal form or the topic of creation repeatedly, that will help for his purification, and that will help him to come to the stage where he can appreciate the human pastimes of the Lord. So if the Jiva constantly describes Maya in relation to the Lord and remembers Maya or hears about Maya with proper faith, then he will not be bewildered by Maya. Mayam varnayato mushya ishwarasya anumodatah shrinvata shraddhaya nityam mayayatma na mukyati. So when a person, like Maya here refers to the topics of universal form, or topics of creation, or the Lord's pastimes with the Maya potency, that the topics of creation. So when the living entity repeatedly describes, hears and remembers the topics of creation, then he will not be bewildered by Maya. And then he can actually better appreciate the sweet pastimes of the Lord. So therefore the description of the universal form, the description of Maya as an assistance to the process of chanting, remembering and hearing is also bhakti. And this is done so that for the purification of the living entity, so that a person will be able to better appreciate the further pastimes of the Lord. So that is why the Bhagavatam begins with the Purushavatara, saying the second and third canto, even the fifth canto, the description of the planetary systems. So these topics are mentioned repeatedly.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
So there are some questions in the chat box. Yes. What is the difference between skin mentioned in verse 16 and verse 18? So in the verse 16, the skin sense organ which is spread all over the body like the prana. So verse 18, the presiding deity of the skin sense organ is Vayu. The sense object is touch. The presiding deities of the hair sense organ are the plants, and their function is relief from itching. So, what he says is that there are two aspects of the skin. One aspect of the skin is the hair, and another aspect of the skin is you can say that which is without the hair. So, the verse 16 refers to that aspect of the skin which is without the hair, and the verse 18 refers to that the skin sense organ contains that hair actually. And for the verse 16, the skin sense organ, for the presiding deity is the plants, and the Vayu is the presiding deity, and for hair, the presiding deity is the plants. Why the word Amsha is used for all? So, why the word Amsha is used is the Adidaiva enters the universal form along with their portion, subtle sense organ. So, the portion of the gross sense organ is the subtle sense organ. The Amsha refers to that the Amsha refers to the portion of the gross sense organ, which refers to subtle sense organ. So the presiding deity, the sense devata, enters the gross sense organ of the universal form along with the subtle sense organ, which is considered as an amsha of the gross sense organ. Just like we have the nostril is called as nasika, and the portion of the nasika, which is the subtle sense organ, that is the granendriya. So the Ashwini Kumaras, I guess Ashwini Kumaras were the presiding deities. In the universal form, when the nostrils become manifest, the Ashwini Kumaras enter that nostril along with the subtle sense organ, which is the amsha of the gross sense organ. Text 25, the word refers to, which is the word which refers to Rudra. Yeah, I was also actually looking for the word, but Atmanam Chasya Nirbhinnam Abhimanu Avishat Padam. So, Abhimana means he by whom one develops a sense of I. This is the deity Rudra. Let me just see the Sanskrit commentary, because sometimes they give the actual which word refers to Rudra. It's 25th verse. No? So, Abhimanaha Rudraha. That's what Vishnu Chakradipad writes in his commentary. Abhimanyate anena iti Abhimanaha Rudraha. Like sometimes in Sanskrit, actually the particular word, it can refer to many meanings. For example, Dasharatha refers to Dasharath Maharaj. But when you add a particular pratyaya, when you add a particular tadita pratyaya, the word will become Dasharati. So Dasharati refers to the son of Dasharatha, that is Lord Ram. Similarly, Abhimana normally refers to, say, the sense of highness. But Abhimana can also refer to the presiding deity of that sense of highness, that sense of Ahankara, that is Rudra. So, text 22, Lokesha Vishnu Ravishat. The demigod Vishnu, not the personality of Godhead. So, Canto 2, chapter 6, Purusha Sukta confirmed. We had seen something similar, universal form. Is it repeated here again or some way different? Yeah, in the sense, the same universal form description is almost similar. Some, as I mentioned, some details may be described more detailed in the second canto compared to third canto. In what sense is the universal form imaginary? Yeah, Prabhupada mentions repeatedly in different places, the universal form is the imaginary form of the Lord. Or it's the material form of the Lord. In the sense that, for example, like if you have seen say the inauguration of Olympics or some big sports event, and some thousands of people come together in a particular formation, and each one actually they wear a particular dress, and then they come in a particular formation, and then at that time you will see, when you see from a distance, when they give the top view, actually it will have the say map of the particular country, or it will you'll be able to see that say Olympic symbol, or they come in a particular formation. They with states and different this thing, etc. So when you see whole matter, actually India is not there. It is just the shape of India is there. But the individual, the objects or individual elements who are actually who are part and who have played a role in creating that the shape of India, they are actually real. Because the different persons are sitting in different formation, and those persons are real, but the whole that Indian map is actually unreal, and that India is actually not there. It is the Indian map is there, so that you can think, oh, this the India map is there. So similarly, the universal form is the imaginary form, in the sense that the different parts of the universal form, they are real objects. They are real objects because the different devatas are there, the senses are there, sense objects, etc. But the overall universal form, it is like the method or a model by which a person can meditate on that universal form, because a person who is very much in the bodily concept of life, he cannot appreciate the say two-handed form, who cannot appreciate the other forms of the Lord, the transcendental forms of the Lord, in which he cannot appreciate the pastimes of the Lord. So therefore they need something gigantic in order to meditate, because they can't think, oh, God can be, how the God can be just two-handed palm, how the God can be a Matsya or a Kurma, tortoise. So they need some gigantic conception. Only then they will accept, oh, this is God. So for such people who are in the gross bodily platform, or who are not in that, who are not qualified to appreciate the two-handed palm, this particular method of meditating on the universal form is given. And the individual parts of the universal form are real, but the overall form is imaginary. Like suppose you make something, you make a rabbit. You make a rabbit using, say, different vegetables. You take different vegetables and you arrange the vegetables in different formation, different way, and then when you see from a distance, you see as if there is a rabbit is there, there is some horn is there, some leg is there, some eye of the rabbit is there. Actually a rabbit over there? No, there is not actually a rabbit, it's an imaginary rabbit. But at the same time, the individual, the parts by which the rabbit is made, they are all real. They are all real. So similarly, then we can say the universal form is like that. The individual parts of the universal form, they are all actually real, but universal form is an imaginary form. It's a method of purification for elevating the living entity. In verse number 26, there is no mention of Lord Vishnu. How to understand that he is Vishnu? Verse number 26. Verse number 26, the word Mahan means Vishnu. Mahan means Vishnu. So you see, there are different, if we read Amara Kosha is like that, in Sanskrit it is said that Amara Kosha and Panini Vyakaran, they are like the father and mother. Previously, even just few centuries before, when the traditional education was prominent, in every house people would actually, small children would memorize Amara Kosha and the Panini Ashtadhyayi Sutras. They are like the father and mother of Sanskrit. In Amara Kosha, if you see, there are so many names of each Devata are mentioned. Many names of Vishnu are mentioned. Of course, we have 108 names of Vishnu in the Vishnu Sahasranama. But the common names which are used in the literature, they are mentioned in Amara Kosha. Many names of Indra, Brahma, etc. So sometimes we may not be aware of the names which are not commonly used. The Mahan, the word Mahan is there, the word that Mahan refers to Vishnu. So, Prabhuji, in that sense, can we say that our body is also unreal or imaginary, as he explained about Olympic formation with respect to imaginary form of Virata Rupa? Now, our body is actually real. Our body is actually made up of the different elements. Brahma, Satyam, Jagan, Mithya. When we say this world is real, but we say it is unreal in the sense it is temporary. Our body is unreal in the sense that because it is temporary, in that sense it is illusory, but actually our body is real. It is temporary. So universal form, that is one way to understand. It is said in imaginary form or a material form or a temporary form of the Supreme Lord. Imaginary form, some other better explanation is there, I'll think about it. The imaginary form rabbit matches with the actual rabbit. What matches between the universal form and actual form of the Lord? Because in universal form, there's a description of the mouth, hand, leg. All these different elements are there in the universal form. So that appears like a person, but a very huge person. is a very huge person. But it appears just like a rabbit has a particular, say, eye is there, hand is there, leg is there. Similarly, in the universal form, different aspects of the person are there. So, yeah, at this time, at least at this part, this is what I have understanding. If I heard something more, I'll share. Okay. So shall we proceed? Right. So we'll go ahead. 27th verse. Shrishnosya dyaur dharapatpyam kam nabe udapadyata gunanam vrittayaveshu pratiyante suradayah. So from the head of the universal palm appeared Swargaloka. From his feet appeared the earthly planetary system, Dharapatpyam. And Kam Naber Udapadyata, from his navel area appeared Bhuvar region. And in these places, Gunanam Vrittayo Yeshu Pratiyante Suradayah. In these places, one sees the Devatas and other beings who are transformations of the Gunas. So this verse describes that how the three worlds appeared from the universal form. So, like for example, I think in the Western world or somebody drew a picture of God. So some painter, he drew a picture of God of a very old person with a huge muscles and beard, etc. And he was holding the universe as a picture of God. So generally, because people think that God means somebody who must be really huge with hefty muscles and he must be really struggling to hold up the universe. So in the Western world, some thinker, he imagined that to be the God, form of the God, and he drew such a picture. But the universal form is actually because there are people who think that God means he must be really huge. They can't appreciate how the God can be just a Krishna playing flute, or what to speak of Krishna. They can't appreciate God in even other forms, as a human being, as an animal, etc. Therefore, they need something gigantic, something huge. Some huge form, only they will accept only such kind of a form. So for them, for their purification, such kind of description of the universal form is given. So from the universal form appear the three planetary systems. In these places, one sees the Devatas and other beings who are transformations of the Gunas. That means like the Swarga Loka, there are Devatas. In the Bhuvar Loka, different living entities are there. All these living entities are under the three modes of nature. Atyantikena satvena divam deva prapedire daram rajasvabhavena panayo yecha tanam. So, by the predominance of sattva guna, the devatas achieve Swargaloka. Divam deva prapedire. And daram rajasvabhavena. The human beings who are generally in Rajoguna, they actually occupy the earthly planetary systems. And the human beings occupy the earthly planets along with other animals who are helpful for the human beings, such as the cows. This is Krishna Chakotipad adds. So below human beings are the animals. Although some of them mingle with the human society, cows, horses, etc. are habituated to living under the protection of the human beings. So they also occupy the earthly planet. So there are many other animals. So here we see that by the Atyantikena Satvena, that means by predominance of Sattva Guna, the Devatas achieved Swargaloka. And so by the excessive development of the modes of passion and ignorance, the human being indulges in killing the animals who are meant to be protected by the mankind. So he talks about killing of that. The next verse, Tartiyena Svabhavena Bhagavan Nabhimashrita Ubayor Antaram Vyoma Ye Rudra Parshadam Gana. And then next verse describes those who are in Tamoguna. Tartiyena means by excessive development of the Tamoguna, or by Tamoguna, and those who are Rudra Parshada, followers of Rudra, they attain the Bhuvaraloka. And this Bhuvaraloka, it is situated, where is it situated? Ubayor Antaram Vyoma. It is situated in between Swargaloka and the earth. It is situated in between the Swargaloka and the earth. And this Bhuvaraloka, Bhagavan Nabhimashrita, it emanated from the navel of the Supreme Lord. That Bhagavan Nabhimashrita. And in this Bhuvaraloka, the Parshadas of Rudra, who are predominantly in Tamoguna, they reside. And so Bhuvaraloka is the space between the earth and the heavens. So Prabhupada quotes even those verses, Urdhvam Gachanti Sattvastha Madhye Tishtanti. So those who are situated in the mode of goodness are promoted to the stages of the Devatas. Those who are situated in mode of passion are placed in human society. And those who are situated in mode of ignorance are placed in the society of animals and ghosts. And then next verse. So in these verses, how from the universal form the three planetary systems emanate and which living entities occupy those planetary systems, they are described. Now in the next verse, how from the universal form different members of Varnashram emanated. That is described. 30th verse. Mukato vartata brahma purushasya kurudvaha yastun mukatvat varnana mukyo bhut brahmano bhut. So Mukato Vartata Brahma, Purushasya Kurudvaha. So Kurudvaha, or best of the Kurus, Mukata, from the mouth of the universal form, the Vedas appeared. Brahma refers to the Vedas. And the Brahmanas, who are the chief among the castes, Mukhya Abhut, and who are the Guru of all the Varnas. Mukhya Abhut, Brahmano Guru. The Brahmanas were the chief among the Varnas and were the Guru of all the castes. And because they are favorable towards the Vedas, Yastu Unmukatvat Varnana. Unmukatvat means inclined to or favorable to. So many times we have the word Vimukha. Vimukha means turned against. Unmukha means inclined towards. Because the Brahmanas are inclined towards the Vedas, they also appeared from the mouth of the universal form. Prabhupada writes a beautiful purport. He says that all the Varnas appeared from the universal form, and the no Varna should be considered as inferior, because all of them appear from the same universal form. Just like in our body, we don't consider some part of the body to be inferior. At the same time, there is a natural superiority. Like for example, mouth is important or the head is important. Because even if the hand is cut, you can continue to live. But if the head is cut, one cannot continue to live. So although all the parts are important, but still there is a natural superiority of one part over the other part. So in that sense, just like in the body, the head is important. Similarly, in the society, the Brahmanas, they play most crucial role. If the other parts of the body are cut off from the body, man can continue his life, but if the mouth is cut off, one cannot live. The Vedic wisdom. So somebody is born in a Brahmana family, but if he does not have any inclination towards the scriptures, then he cannot be considered a Brahmana. Even if he is born in a Brahmana family. So the Vedas are situated on the mouth of the Lord, and therefore anyone who is inclined to the Vedic wisdom is certainly situated in the mouth of the Lord, and he is a Brahman. And that is why it is also said that the Brahmanas, they have two functions. Like by feeding the Brahmanas, one can satisfy the Lord. In the Jai Vijay episode, the Lord is actually glorifying. He says that I take greater pleasure when the Brahmanas are fed than the sacrificial offerings which are fed into my mouth in the form of Agni. So Prabhupada says that Brahmanas are supposed to eat on behalf of the Supreme Lord, and they are also supposed to preach on behalf of the Supreme Lord. So because Brahmanas come from the mouth has two functions, eating and also vibrating. So Brahmanas are supposed to eat on behalf of the Lord, and also they are supposed to preach the message of the Lord on behalf of the Lord. So this inclination towards Vedic wisdom is also not restricted to any particular caste or community. Anyone from any family may become inclined towards Vedic wisdom. And a real Brahmana is a natural teacher. So Mukato Abhut Brahmano Guru is a natural teacher. And unless one has Vedic knowledge, one cannot become a spiritual master. And then Prabhupada says, but with respect to a Guru, the real qualification of a Guru is one should be a Vaishnava. Satkarma Nipuno Vipro, Mantra Tantra Visharada, Avaishnavo Guru Nasyat, Vaishnava Prapacho Guru. Somebody, even an impersonalist can be a Brahmana, but he cannot be a Guru because he is not a Vaishnava. Especially he cannot be a Guru in the path of Bhakti. So one who is situated in the impersonal Brahman and has no information on the personality of Godhead may become a Brahmana, but he cannot become a Guru. On the other hand, a person who is a Vaishnava, even if he is not a sannyasi, even if he is not a Brahmana, even if he is a Shudra, he can still, if he is learned in Krishna Tattva, he can be a Guru. Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Kenenaya Yei Krishna Tattva Vrita Sei Guru Pai. And then the next verse describes how the Kshatriyas appeared from the universal form. Bahubhyo Vartata Kshatram Kshatriya Stad Anubrataha Yojata Strayate Varnan Paurusha Kantaka Kshatar. So from the arms of the universal form, the Kshatriyas appeared. And the Kshatriyas, what is their function? Yojatas Trayate Varnan Paurusha Kantaka Kshata. They are supposed to protect the other Varnas from Kantaka Kshata. Kantaka Kshata means from the troublesome aggressors. They are supposed to protect. Because the Kshatriyas, they perform the function of protection in the sense that they are also representatives of the Supreme Lord. The conception of the, again Prabhupada talks about the conception of the caste system is based on the quality and not based on the birth. So Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, Vishnu performs the role of actually maintenance or protection. And the Kshatriya kings, they are also representatives of Vishnu because they are supposed to protect all the Varnas. So if we see the the modern democratic, modern actually government, Prabhupada explains that it is mostly composed of Vaishyas and Shudras. The modern democratic state is the government of the Vaishyas and Shudras. And a qualified monarch is given the respect of the Lord because he represents the Lord. Sometimes the people, like especially for any spiritual effort of say preaching, to go on in the long run, the cooperation between the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, they become very crucial. In the first canto also, the sages tell that we are able to perform this yajna for 1,000 years because of the rule of Parikshit Maharaj. So, Prabhupada explained that because of the cooperation between the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, one can perform the spiritual activities in the long run. The Swayambhu Manu Karma Muni episode later we will see that this principle will come clearly. Sometimes one may think that we don't need the Kshatriyas, we may think. But it's a simple understanding. Just like the Brahmanas represent the mouth and Kshatriyas represent the hands. If you say we don't need the Kshatriyas, it is like saying that we don't need the hands. So one can just experiment for 1 week to do all the activities without the help of the hands. We can examine whether we are comfortable. You have to do everything without the hands. Eating without the hands. When a person goes to pass stool without the hands. Any activity without the hands. So, definitely one will be miserable. The hands also play a very crucial role. Even for eating the mouth, you need the hand. Whether you eat with a spoon or with a hand, but you need the hand actually. So the cooperation between the different varnas, that becomes very crucial, especially the cooperation between the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, that becomes very crucial for long-term propagation of the Sanatana Dharma. Yeah, next verse. The problems of modern human society are due to the lack of qualified Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and the over-influence of the Vaishyas and Shudras by so-called general franchise. So this is very crucial, this one, that in emergencies sometimes, say Vaishya, Shudra, somebody they may play others' role. But in the long term, everyone has a role, but sometimes when the teaching is taken up by the Vaishyas or when the governance is taken up by the Shudras or Vaishyas, that will make the system completely, the system will completely collapse actually. That is one instance happening in Kali Yuga. 32nd verse. Visho vartanta tasyorvor loka vritti karir vibho Vaishyas tad udbhavo vartam nrinam yas samavartayat. So this verse explains that from the thighs of the Supreme Lord, the Vaishyas appeared. So the Vaishyas, what is their function? Loka vritti karir vibho. They are supposed to perform occupations of farming and which gives sustenance to the people. And the Vaishyas, that way they would actually maintain all the members of the society by producing the food grains which will sustain the people. So industry is an artificial means of livelihood, and large-scale industry especially is the source of all the problems of society. So there are different types of Vaishyas. Some of them are called Kshetri or landowners, some are called Krishna, land tillers, some are called Tilavanik, some are grain raisers, some are Gandhavanik, some are Swarnavanik. There are different types of actually Vaishyas. The Brahmanas are the teachers, Kshatriyas protect the citizens from the thieves, Vaishyas are in charge of production and distribution. So one of the aspects in Kali Yuga is that there is so much of intermixture of the roles. Because Kali Yuga situation is so complicated. But in general, sometimes when say one role is taken, somebody who does not have that nature, then it will create so much of suppose when a Kshatriya take Brahminical role, then he may use the say teaching for one's own agenda to get certain things done. Or if suppose a Vaishya drives the education system, then he will use the education system mainly for earning more profit or more money. And we can see predominantly in Kali Yuga, practically all the education institutions, they are run by the politicians or who are actually different businessmen who are actually they are running the education system to actually earn more money. There are payment seat and other things. So like that, every aspect. Similarly, and somebody who is not a Kshatriya, when he takes up the Kshatriya profession, what happens? So we can see the drawbacks of each this one. So formerly the Brahmanas were given all necessities of life by the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas because they had no time to spend making a living. And Kshatriyas would collect taxes from the Vaishyas and Shudras, but the Brahmanas were exempt from paying income tax or land revenue. So Prabhupada is explaining the Varnashram system. So I think complete with this last. This verse is an important verse. I'll just go through this verse and then. Padvyam Bhagavato Jagye Tushusha Dharma Siddhaye Tasyam Jata Pura Shudro Yadvritya Tushyate Harihi. Thereafter, service was manifested from the legs of the personality of Godhead for the sake of perfecting the religious function. And situated on the legs are the Shudras who satisfy the Lord by service. So, from the feet of the universal form appeared the nature service. From that appeared the Shudras. And by that service attitude, this service attitude is important for not only for the Shudras, but it is important for the perfection of all the members of Varna and Ashram. Susrusha Dharma Siddhaye, that means this service attitude is important for the perfection of all the members of Varnashram and not only for the Shudras. And by the service attitude, the Lord is pleased. So this verse is a very important verse. So without this service, the system cannot function properly. That means this aspect of service, or we can say more particularly the mood of service, that is important that is applicable for all the members of Varna, even for a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or Vaishya, whichever they will be performing different activities, but the mood should be of service. Therefore, it is said that it is important for the perfection of all the Varnashram members. And the Shudras appeared from the feet with this attitude. So sometimes, especially in the Western world, if somebody says that I am from India, many times in the Western world people would say, oh, you are from that place, you are from that country where the caste system is there. So in the Western academia, the caste system is, they have created so many literatures and they have created a certain narrative that the caste system is something wrong, where the Shudras were exploited. The word Shudra term itself it has been, they have created such a narrative as if it is like a very derogatory term. It's a very abusive term. But actually, in one sense, one of the easiest way to perfection is, from one point of view, is to be a Shudra. That means, to be a Shudra means a Shudra has a natural service attitude. He has a natural service attitude, and if that service attitude can be directed towards the Lord, then he can very easily attain perfection. So in that sense, like it's one of the, that's why Prabhupada writes a very profound point in the purport. It is better to be a Shudra than to be a Brahmana and not develop the service attitude. Better to be a Shudra with the service attitude and not to be a Brahmana without the service attitude. So therefore, this Sushrusha, the service attitude of a Shudra, this is very crucial. It is important for all the Varnas, and they may perform their service in different ways. Somebody may be by teaching, somebody may perform the service by protecting, or somebody may be doing by taking care of the cows or business, etc. But the essential mood is a service attitude, and by the service attitude only the Lord is ultimately pleased. So I'll discuss some more points in relation to this tomorrow, and then not tomorrow, the next week on Monday, and then we'll complete this chapter, go to the next chapter. So just questions or so. Just 1 minute. Many times in ISKCON we stress everyone should preach, but not everyone is like that. So these category of preachers create confusion in the minds of devotees. So how to understand this? So the question is, many times in ISKCON we stress that everyone should preach, but not everyone has the inclination to preach or the nature to preach. So these category of preachers who don't have that the nature of preaching create confusion in the minds of the devotees. So how to understand this? See, when we talk about, say, everyone should preach, when it comes to, like, say, just say giving the holy name, explaining something about the holy name, telling some stories or something like that. In that way, anybody can do actually. In that sense, everyone can preach, because in that sense, anybody can actually tell about the holy name, some stories of, say, Dhruva Maharaj or Prithu Maharaj, just simple stories. But when it comes to more, say, teaching, in the sense that more detailed philosophical teaching, then everyone may not have that capacity and inclination. Then one has to be careful, one may not enter into that zone. But preaching also, we see everyone can preach. Preaching can also in different levels. One is actually explaining to others, and another is actually, say, for example, deity worship is also a preaching. Because when a person, say, decorates the Lord beautifully, when a person serves the Lord in such a way that when people come to the temple, they get attracted to the Lord, that is also preaching. And when somebody, say, cooks nice prasadam, and when people who take the prasadam, when they get satisfied, that is also preaching. And somebody who, say, manages, even for preaching, and this thing to happen, there are so many people who are involved in management, and some people who support the preaching, they are also connected with the preaching. So in that sense, everybody should be, we can say, connected to the preaching movement, either through speaking or through different activities. And in whatever activity we do, at least we should cultivate the mood of actually helping others. So one of the things Radhanath Maharaj mentioned in a class, the essence of preaching is not in actually giving lectures to others. The essence of preaching is to develop the sincere attitude of feeling for the suffering of others. The paradukka dukki, that is the core mood of a preaching actually. Because sometimes one may be very expert in actually in speaking, but one may not have this core mood of a preacher, the paradukka dukki, feeling for the suffering of others, wanting to help others. And sometimes, like for example, this Vidura Maitreya Samvad, Vidura is not preaching, he is only asking questions. But in asking questions, he is exhibiting the mood of feeling for the suffering of others. That is how he began the question. Sukhaya karmani karoti lo. So we should ensure that we don't get diverted from that essential mood of preaching. And that is one thing. But of course, about preaching, like when it comes to everyone can, even with respect to explaining to others, with respect to different people can preach in different levels also. So there is say preaching to certain intellectual class or certain class of people, and sometimes there may be just preaching to simple people. We can just explain some stories. We can inspire them about. We do some nice kirtan and tell some stories. That way, everybody can do. That way, the preaching also different levels are there. And one of the things is that at least there should be some healthy balance of Jivedaya, Vaishnava Seva, and Name Ruchi. Our own sadhana, and then trying to serve other Vaishnavas, and also trying to help people who are common people. And it could be somebody may be preaching, say, conducting some courses or corporate programs, but others can do in their own small way. It could be 2 people or 3 people or some simple audience, some village preaching. Villages, they don't need village preaching. It's not that you're required to speak many big philosophy, but different people can do that also. And that is also important. It is said that leaders are born but not made. But I give a lot of seminars in ISKCON to train leaders like GBC College, leadership courses. After this also we see devotees committing mistakes. So is Varnashram important? One thing is that when we talk about the training, first we have to see the potential of a person. And then when a person has the potential, and then when you give training, then he can become a leader. If a person has the potential of a leader, if a person has the potential of whether it's a leader or a Kshatriya or a business, and then when you give training in that field, then he can excel. But many times, sometimes what happens is that when we choose a person, sometimes we may choose a person who does not have that potential. And then we think, anybody can be trained to become a leader or as a preacher or as a different roles. Then when we have chosen the person who does not have that potential, then how much ever you may give the training, then it will not work out actually. Therefore, it is important that training is important, but before training, we also have to see that whether the person has the potential. So that's also. So the universal form is a conception given in the Shastra to facilitate meditation in the Supreme, the primary stages of personalism. For example, when you see the trees invokes remembrance, they are the bones of the Lord. The remembrance of the Lord, a feeling of submission is drawn out of the living entity, correct? Which becomes his first step in God realization. Is this understanding correct? Yeah, exactly correct. When we see the different aspects of the universe, we can see the different aspects of the universe in relation to the body of the Supreme Lord. When you see the mountains, or when you see the trees, as you mentioned, the rivers, the different aspects. All these different things are the parts of the universal form of the Lord. So we can see that, oh, this is the shoulder of the Lord, this is the hair of the Lord. So when we think like that, that will help a person to get purified. The Kshatriyas appeared out of his arm. Where the Kshatriyas appeared out of his arm, it's literal. It's literal in the sense that the symbolic thing, the arms represent the protection. With arms we actually protect. As a function of the arms. The Kshatriyas, they play the role of a protection, so therefore they appeared from the arms of the Lord. How to reconcile the statement when demigods are completely free from all material desire to lord it over material energy, they become pure devotees. And when the desire to lord it over material energy has vanished, they are promoted to the post of the devatas. That's why I mentioned the Prabhupada is giving a more liberal step in the 3.6.11 when he talks about the devatas. He says devatas are those people in whom the desire to lord it over material energy has completely vanished. So here Prabhupada is taking a more liberal step. There are two principles, praising and criticizing. Parasvabhava karmani na prashamshati na nindati. The verse comes in the 11th canto. Neither praise nor criticize. But in one place it is mentioned that out of the two, praising and criticizing, one should avoid criticism. But sometimes if you praise more than one's level, then that is not a serious mistake. Sometimes one can be liberal in one's praise. Because it should not be flattering, but sometimes one can be liberal in one's praise. The Prabhupada, we can say the 3.6.11 is more in the Prabhupada is taking a more liberal stance, is a more in the Uttamadhikari mood. Sometimes we praise in a more liberal way. 3.5.51 is more like a Madhyamadhikari mood. Demigods they are devotees, but they have a desire to lord it over material nature. This is a discrimination. So sometimes we see in different aspects of the pure devotees, in their dealings or in their speech, sometimes they may take the mood of a Uttamadhikari, and sometimes they may take the mood of a Madhyamadhikari. Sometimes a guru may even glorify the disciple. But a disciple should not take it literally. The disciple should think that, he is actually glorifying in the mood of a Uttamadhikari. But I should not take this glorification. So one has to understand that mood. And the same gurus, when he comes in the Madhyamadhikari mood, sometimes he may chastise the disciple. So 3.5.51 is more like a Madhyamadhikari mood. Thank you for understanding the mode of things. Okay. Narasimha Avatar Prabhu, we also heard that some of the demigods in our universe are pure devotees, like Ganesh, Surya, etc. Some of the demigods can be pure devotees. Like the Brahma in the current universe is a pure devotee. Yamaraj is a pure devotee. And it's not some of the demigods can be Karma Mishra Bhaktas, some of the demigods can be pure devotees actually. It is true. As the other day mentioned that Indra, even the demigods, some of them may be Karma Mishra Bhaktas previously at a certain stage, but they may become pure devotees later. Say for example, Indra, we see many episodes in the Bhagavatam. But it is not that he is always a Karma Mishra Bhakta. No, he will become a pure devotee, or he might have become a pure devotee. So therefore, we have to understand that I mentioned that verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We see Indra trying to destroy Govardhan, the Vrindavan, with the Samvartaka clouds. But Rupa Goswami quotes another verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where he says that when Indra heard a flute sound of Krishna, tears started coming from his eyes, from all his 1,000 eyes. And then through those tears, he nourished the Vrindavan Dham. Like that he quotes the verse. The Madhyamadhikari and Uttamadhikari mode, how a neophyte derives the principles from the different modes. So Madhyamadhikari mode, especially when you want to understand the Siddhanta, the proper discrimination, that is exhibited in a Madhyamadhikari mode. In the Uttamadhikari mode, Uttamadhikari is also defined in different ways. The nectar of devotion, Rupa Goswami defines Uttamadhikari as one who is highly learned in the Shastra, one who can convince anybody of any principle in the Shastra. That's how Rupa Goswami defined. But in 11th Canto, Uttamadhikari is defined as one who sees Krishna in every situation. Uttamadhikari is defined as somebody who thinks that everybody is a devotee except me. So that Uttamadhikari mode, that is like seeing Krishna in every situation. Devi Krishna Mayi Prokta Radhika Paradevata. So that is because of his one's ecstatic love for Krishna. One sees Krishna in every situation, and one sees that he is the only non-devotee. Everyone else is a devotee. That is the Uttamadhikari mode I am talking about. Madhyamadhikari mode is where there is a proper discrimination. When there is a proper discrimination, a person sees the reality as it is. Like for example, in the Uttamadhikari mood is a more subjective reality, but when a person speaks from a Madhyamadhikari mood, it's a more objective reality. Like for example, like when the Kapila Dev appeared, Kardama Muni offers prayers to Kapila Dev, and Kardama Muni says that when people worship the Devatas, they get results after a very long time. But when people worship you, they become very quickly satisfied. Actually, Kardama Muni and Devahuti, they performed austerities for many years, and then Kapila Dev appeared. But he feels that, oh, Lord has reciprocated so quickly. But Devatas, people worship the Devatas, Devatas fulfill their desires of the worshippers after a long time. But this verse is contradicting with the verse in the Gita, Kankshanta Karmanam Siddhim Yajanta Iha Devata. People worship the Devatas for quick benefits. Devatas quickly fulfill the benefits. So how do we understand? Here, Kardama Muni is speaking this verse because when his heart is overwhelmed with the mood of gratitude, in that ecstatic mood, he is actually glorifying the Lord. So many times the Uttamadhikari, he speaks from that platform where from deep spiritual feelings he may speak something. So you cannot literally take those words to be true. Like Uddhava says that Manye Asuran Bhagavatam Pratishe. The demons are better than the devotees. So can you literally take this word? Narada Muni says to Yudhishthira in the 7th canto, 1st chapter, that these demons are much better than me. So this is a statement made from Uttamadhikari platform. So that cannot be literally taken. That's a subjective reality. It's a subjective reality from based on the feelings of Narada Muni. But the objective reality you can get when you hear same Narada Muni speaking from a Madhyamadhikari platform with the proper discrimination. So therefore, that we have to see that way. Like for example, when Krishna is speaking the Kamshanta Karmanam Siddhim, like there is a proper philosophical discourse. There is a proper philosophical discourse. But when Kardama Muni is speaking that prayer to Kapila Dev, he is not giving some philosophical discourse. His heart is overwhelmed with gratitude, and then he speaks the word which is opposite to what is there in the Gita. It's a word spoken out of deep gratitude.